Oh, I have to give permission for the translator, right? 1 second. Om Ajnanatirandasya Jnananjanashalakaya Akshurumilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Nama Shrestam Manumapi Sachiputram Matrasharupam Rupam Tasya Grajamurupurim Maturim Gosavatim Radha Kundan Girivaram Maho Radhika Madhavasam Prapto Yasya Pratita Kripaya Shri Gurum Tam Natasmi Vancha Kalpataru Vyasya Kripa Sindhu Vyaivacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah Nikhila Shruti Mali Ratnamala Dhyuti Nirajita Padapankajanta Aji Mukta Kulairupasyamanam Paritasvam Harinam Samshrayami Anarpitacharim Chirat Karunayavatirna Kaloho Shamarpaitunum Natoch Balarasam Svabhakti Shriyam Hari Purata Sundara Dyuti Kadamba Sandipitaha Sada Hridaye Kandare Spurato Va Sachinandana Ajanulambita Bhujo Kanakavadato Sankirtanai Kapitaro Kamalaya Takshu Vishwambaro Dhyavaro Jugadharma Palo Vande Jagat Priyakaro Karunavataro Ladini Shakti Sarupaya Gauranga Suridaya Cha Bhakta Shakti Pradhanaya Gadadhara Namastute He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namastute Radhe Vrindavanadishe Karunamrita Vahini Kripaya Nijapadabja Dasyan Maham Pradiyatam Bhaktya Vihina Aparadha Lakshay Shiptascha Kamaditarangamadhe Kripa Maitvam Sharanam Prapanam Brinde Namaste Charanaravindam Brinde Namaste Charanaravindam Srila Gurudev ki jai, Sriman Mahaprabhu ki jai, Sri Harinam Sankirtan ki jai, Sri Sri Dauji Gopal ji ki jai, Grantara Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Sri Venu-gita ki jai, Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki jai, Gaur Premanand, Hari Hari Bol. So good evening to all of you. Pranam, welcome. And today we are continuing with our series of lectures on Sri Venu-gita, or the Song of the Flute. Today is our fifth meeting. Yeah. And today we will be studying verse number 5. And to be honest, I don't think we will be able to finish today verse number 5. So that may take at least 2 meetings, let's see, which is, as I mentioned, one of the most important verses of the whole Srimad Bhagavatam. But let's begin as usual with some brief summary of previous class when we studied 2 verses, verse number 3, verse number 4. And in the first 2 verses of the Venu-gita, briefly recap, we can remember how the scene that was being depicted was in the forest. Krishna in the forest with his friends, entering the forest, on all the different details of the scenario there. And now in verse 3 and 4, we travel back to the village. And Sukadeva Goswami is depicting very expertly to Pariksit Maharaj how that situation of the forest, how this song of the flute has a particular impact in the gopis in the village, who are ashrutya, as we say. They are hearing in a very absorbed way, or even there, for them, they can hear a little bit of the song, and for them, that's enough to be thrown into a pool of ecstatic absorption. Both verses 3 and 4 we mentioned start with the word tat, which means that song flute, that particular Venu-gita, which created that unique effect in the gopis in this case. Of course, Venu-gita is making the whole Vrindavan mad, but in this particular section of the Bhagavatam is depicting the madness of the gopis. And that's why the word smara was used in both the 2 verses 3 and 4. Smara, which meant Cupid. So it aroused the influence of Cupid. Romantic dedication in the gopis was inspired. They were cupidized, as we mentioned. Cupidity was there. And of course, this applies only to the Braja gopis. The other Brajavas are totally affected, but not in the context of Cupid. And then Sukadeva started to describe in a more specific way the gopis in the Madhurya camp, and then a certain group of gopis, Kachit, some of them, which the acharyas mentioned is Sri Radha and her group, and in a very intimate setting, they started or tried to start to describe in confidentiality the effect of the flute. Swasakibhyo, say the mantra, with her own intimate friends. And of course, we spent some words trying to clarify what do we mean by Cupid and the difference between mundane cupidity and transcendental aprakrita, romanticism, if you will, and how the two are worlds apart, and actually how one is the solution, if you will, to the other, as Sukadeva Goswami himself mentions in the Falashruti of this whole Rasa Panchadhyaya, the very last verse of the 5 chapters of the Rasa Lila, where the fruit of the whole hearing of that section is mentioned. Sukadeva Goswami saying, Vikriditam Brajavadu Vididam Cha Vishnu Sradam Vitanu Srinuyada Tavarna Yet Yet Bhaktim Param Bhagavati Pratilavya Kamam Hritrogam Asva Pahinotya Chirena Dira. In brief, he's saying, by hearing this Rasa Lila, you will conquer lust. You will attain the highest devotion. This Rasa Lila, which seems to be the greatest promotion of lust for the uninformed eye, is actually the ultimate solution to the disease of the heart, selfish desire. So in this way, the gopis start to try to reveal their minds in Swayatiya according to like-minded members, intimate personalities. And they're trying to keep their love hidden. Gopi means that, but in these moments, they are become overflowed by emotion and they have to do something with that. So they try to share with like-minded devotees. Because the flute is taking that out. Again, generally the gopis in the mood of parakya, they're trying to hide their emotions. It's a forbidden love, clandestine, if you will, love. But Krishna plays the flute and makes the whole ocean overflow. So the gopis try to say something in parokshabad, nonetheless, in indirect speech. But as we mentioned, when they try to say something, their throats become choked up and they cannot speak in ecstasy, basically. We mentioned different reasons why people sometimes may not be able to speak on stage or in any given situation, not due to ecstasy, but due to stage fear or lack of capacity or lack of knowledge of the topic, lack of attraction for the topic, lack of proper desha kala patra. But this is not the case here. So the gopis' silence has to do with the highest things going on inside, basically. And the very last verse, word of these two verses was Nripa. When Sukadeva said, Parikshit Maharaj, O king. So we explain why Sukadeva was saying, O king, to Parikshit. On one side, because Sukadeva himself was becoming ecstatic and trying to convey his own experience to the king. This is what's going on, and taking Parikshit from the hand, crying and saying, this is what's going on in the heart of the Braja Gopikas, in my heart now, by vicarious experience, and by extension now, let's throw it to your heart. Or another option is Parikshit Maharaj himself is becoming, how to say, horripilated, with hairs standing on end and ecstatic. As Sukadeva Goswami is appreciating the experience of his student, how much he's really hearing the Bhagavatam. So he's like kind of glorifying his own disciple, like, oh king, oh, you are experiencing this, basically. So if you are experiencing it, try to imagine what must Sri Radha be experiencing in this precise moment. So Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur then comments to that verse. So which was that specific form of Krishna that made the gopis enter into such unique form of ecstatic silence, if you will? So which was that specific form? Because there are many Krishnas, as we always say. So which was that Krishna? Today we will say which is that Krishna, because that will be described in the 5th verse again, which, as I mentioned, will be one of the most important verses. So also something that I don't remember if we mentioned that last class, but nonetheless it's important, is the gopis first heard the sound of the flute, then they started to say something about that, and by speaking about that, they immediately started to remember Krishna and his activities. So you can clearly see the sequence of Shravan, Kirtan, Smaran. Shravan, first the gopi heard the flute, which is another way of saying hearing Harikatha for us. That's the flute for us. Eventually Harikatha will turn into the flute, basically. So first they heard the Harikatha Shravan, then they started to speak about what they heard, Kirtan. And by doing that properly, their minds become totally captured, and that was Smaran. They were so captured that the Kirtan was stopped. That's the highest form of Kirtan. It seems there is no longer more Kirtan because of choked throat. So you can imagine what Kirtan is in that silence, basically. So in this way, the gopis were just surfacing and going inside the ocean, deep ocean of their ecstatic emotions. And at one point, they were just in intimate group looking at each other, but none of them able to say a word, not able to sleep. But just by looking at each other with full empathic connection, they could understand what's going on in each one's heart. So in that point, there's no need to say anything, basically. But the glances are speaking more than 1,000 words. So that's the opposite sometimes to what we see in conditional life. People are very expert at speaking so much, outside, but inside, sometimes there is not that much stuff to really be appreciated. There's not that much going on inside. So we need to create some dynamics towards outside. But here the gopis will say externally, nothing going on. Internally, oh. So gradually, as our Guru Maharaj will say, you will be speaking about Krishna in such a way that at one point Krishna will do like he did with Ramananda Roy. He say more, say more, say more, shut up, don't speak more. And he will put his hand in our mouth and throw us into the lila. You are speaking too much here. This is too confidential. Go there. Go to the corresponding land with all those stuff. So in this situation, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur also comments in his Sarartha Darshini that Sukadeva Goswami, remember that Sukadeva Goswami is narrating this to Parikshit Maharaj, and he is visualizing all that this is happening. All these dynamics of the lila are being revealed in his heart. So he's seeing the situation and he's conveying that to the king. So he realizes, oh, the gopis' throats are choked up, so they cannot continue speaking. So Sukadeva Goswami, knowing what was going on in the gopis' heart, he began to say what the gopis will have said, basically, but they were not able to speak. So he was able to speak on some level, as we will see, because actually it is described that, we mentioned before, when he said Nripa, one of the options is, "O king, Sukadeva Goswami was not able to speak that much." No? So it's not that the gopis were choked up and Sukadeva Goswami was like, "Yeah, let's continue speaking." No? And whatever was happening to the gopis was happening basically to Sukadeva Goswami. But it is said that Sukadeva Goswami made a great effort to control his ecstasy and continue speaking. Because remember, Parikshit Maharaj had 7 days. And Sukadeva Goswami was to convey the whole Bhagavatam in that 7 days. And not many days were remaining. And as we know, if Sukadeva Goswami will be thrown into an ocean of ecstasy, who knows when he will return. So with great effort, he will take his ecstasy and repress his ecstasy. No, sometimes we hear about repression in this world, but not of ecstasy precisely, other types of things. So in this case, ecstasy is coming, and many of us maybe just like dying for a drop of ecstasy. And in this case, you are having like currents and currents of oceanic ecstasy and just denying that. So one can render a better service. There are many examples in Shastra like this. So Sukadeva Goswami as a char is sitting on Vyasasana and has the service of conveying Bhagavatam to Parikshit. So he knows, I have a deadline, or he has a deadline, and I have therefore a deadline myself. So he's trying, and on many sections of the Bhagavatam, this similar situation is coming. Sukadeva is about to get lost and found, and he somehow continues and continues speaking. There are many cases like that famous Leela with Prabhupada Bhaktisiddhanta also, when someone was like criticizing, basically misunderstanding the gopis and saying some nonsense, and he was like, if I speak, I have to speak in order to protect the dignity of the ideal, but at the same time, this person has no adhikar to hear me speaking about those topics. But I have to say something. He's just doing nonsense and committing a para. But if I say something, what will that person make of that? So these two like in very intense emotion were like clashing inside of him. Srila Sridhar Maharaj narrates that he was present there, and he saw that Prabhupada Bhaktisiddhanta at one point he was not able to do one thing nor the other, and he fainted out of this struggle of different intense ecstatic emotions, so different things like this. So Sukadeva Goswami here is in this situation, basically saying, I know that the gopis cannot speak, but I know what they will say. And I'm almost in the same situation, not being able to speak, but I will make a great effort to not fall in ecstasy. And I will try to describe what the gopis are thinking, seeing in their smaran, in the eye of their minds. So remember that Sanatana Goswami said in chapter, I think 14 of the Bhagavatam, 7 chapters before, Sukadeva Goswami attains Swarup Siddhi while here in the Bhagavatam. So Swarup Siddhi means you develop a perfect capacity to empathize with whatever is going on in the Leela because you are there, basically. So that's the situation, the background to this particular verse. So let's recite it. It's verse number 5. You will see it's a new meter called Mandakranta Chanda. Mandakranta is the name of the Chanda, the meter. So Krishna will be described with very unique and very defining features. So this is a new meter and a quite complicated one. So what we can do, let me see. To begin with, I will share the... I'll try for my first time in life to share screen in Zoom. So let's see how it works for the ones connected to see the verse. Because you see that in the verse, in the file that I sent you, above there are some little lines and signs. So that has to do with the way, ideally, that the syllables are, the rhythm, which are there, they are to be pronounced. So what I will do, what I will do is, I will, this time only, at least, because the rest of the verses will be easier. So I'll recite the verse first myself, and then we can do a second try all together. And also the rhythm is complex and the melody may be even more complex, but nonetheless. Okay. So can you see the verse in the ones who are connected in Zoom? Okay. So my fair experiment was successful. It says like this. Barhapidam natavarapu karnayo karnikaranam bibradvasha kanaka kapisham vaijayantim chamalam randhan venur adhara sudaya rudayam gopa brindir Brindaranyam Shrapadaramanam Prabhishad Gita Kirti. Yeah, we can try. Barhapidam Natabarabapu Karnayo Karnikaranam Bibradvasha Kanaka Kapisham Vaijayantim Chamalam Randhan Benur Adhara Sudaya Purayam Gopa Brinde Brindaranyam Shrapadaramanam Prabhisad Gita Kirti. Okay, so let's go to the to the meaning of the verse. Let's go to this translation first, and then we can share some other thoughts. So it says, wearing a peacock feather ornament upon his head, blue cornicora flowers on his ears, a yellow garment as brilliant as gold, and the Vaijayanti garland, Sri Krishna exhibited his transcendental form as the greatest of dancers as he entered the forest of Vrindavan, beautifying it with the marks of his footprints. He filled the holes of his flute with the nectar of his lips, and the cowherd boys sang his glories. So this is the description of the scene that the gopis are seeing in their heart, and Sukadev is extending to us. So I will briefly describe word by word, and we will try to give some explanation, detailed explanation of each word. So Barhapidam, first of all, that's the first feature. Barhapidam. Barha means peacock feather, Barha. And Apidam means like on one's head, like a decoration on one's head, like crown in the case of Krishna. That's the crown of Krishna Braj, Barhapidam. Natavara means the king of dancers or the best of dancers. Natavara. Nata means dance, and Vara means like the topmost. And Bapu means his body. So he has the body of the best of dancers. That's the generic meaning. Now later we'll see how each expression has many other possible meanings. Then he says Karnayo Karnikaram. So Karnayo means on both ears, it's plural. Karnikaram, one Karnikar flower, basically. Then we will explain more. Bibrad is a verb that applies basically to all the other ornaments mentioned in the verse. Bibrad is like wearing. So you can say he's wearing a peacock feather, he's wearing the flower, he's wearing a body that is the best of dancers, and all the things that will come out now after the Bibrad also. So Bibrad, Basa, Kanaka, Kapisham. So Basa means cloth. Kanaka, Kapisham means Kanaka is like gold, and Kapisham is yellowish, and Vaijayantim Chamalam, and Cha Vaijayanti Malam. Malam means garland, and Vaijayanti is the name of the garland that Krishna wears. Then says Randram Benur. Randram means the holes. Venu means the Venu, the flute. So the holes of the flute, what? Adhara Sudaya Purayan. So Adhara means lips, or his lips in this case, and Sudaya Apuraya. Apuraya means filling up with Sudaya, with the nectar. So filling up with the nectar of his lips, the holes of his flute. When translated, we have to go the opposite order in this case. So he filled, instead of saying he played the flute, no, he filled the holes of his flute with the nectar of his lips. Please, let's be specific. And Gopa Brindair accompanied, Gopa Brinda means along with his Gopas, with a multitude of Gopas. And the last line says, Brindaranyam Chapadaramanam Pravishat Sagita Kirtim. So Brindaranyam means the Aranya or the forest of Brinda, another way of saying Brindavan, Brindaranya. Swapada, his own feet, Swa, his own pada, his own feet. Ramanam means enchanting or loving. Pravishat Gita Kirti. Pravishat means entered. So he entered the forest of Vrindavan with his own feet, like implying walking barefoot there. Gita Kirtihi. Gita means sung or being sung in this case, implies a verb, and Kirtihi means glories. So with his glories being sung, he entered the forest of Vrindavan. So generally, yes, the Gopas are doing kirtan of Krishna's glories while entering with him in Braj, although there will be many other meanings. So that's a general idea of this verse. So let's go to the not so general idea and the specifics of it. So this verse possesses the longest meter of all the other verses of the Venu-gita. If you remember, the first verse possesses the Anushtuv meter, the first verses basically, which is the classical meter like the one you find mostly in Bhagavad Gita. And then from verses 7 to 19, all again we'll have Anushtuv meter. It's mostly the typical meter in the whole Venu-gita. And here we have a long meter. So what that was implication that Sukadeva Goswami has a lot to say. So a shorter meter is not enough. No, I require a longer one so I can express myself more in detail. Because I have to describe that form that is making the throats of the gopis choked up. So he's taking the longest possible meter, which is to say something about that. I mean, there's no longer meter, so okay, let's pick the longest one and let's go with that one. So as I mentioned, this is a very famous verse for many devotees, for great acharyas. This verse is the Krishna meditation. If you want like a meditation on Krishna or on the Krishna we worship in Vrindavan, for many this is the verse. At the end of the explanation, we will see two other verses in the Bhagavatam which are almost similar, identical with this one, but this is the most special one because it is sung by the gopis. The other two are sung outside of Vrindavan, if you will. So again, this is a very, very important verse because it's describing Krishna according the sweet form of Krishna in Vrindavan, according to those qualities which define Krishna. To begin with, peacock feather. I mean, flute. If you put a peacock feather on a flute, you don't need to even say anything else about it. You know Krishna in Vrindavan. So all those things that make Krishna in Vrindavan who he is, Krishna in Vrindavan, are like systematically depicted here in this particular verse. So, and every deity, you know, in the Hindu pantheon has this. If you speak about Shiva, you know, the ashes and the moon and the garland of skulls and so on. And you go, I don't know, to Vishnu, conch shell and lotus and 4 arms, and Lakshmi Devi and a bed of serpents, but he remains in peace in such a bed, no problem. He's Shanti Purusha. He passed the test. And when we get to Krishna, again, you can just, I mean, we can enter in full detail, but you can just say peacock feather flute. I mean, you cannot mistake him with anyone else in the whole, again, Hindu pantheon. Enough. Because that's what they make Krishna Vrindavan. That's what the gopis demanded from Krishna when they met with him in Kurukshetra. And he was coming from Dwarka. There was no peacock feather. There was a big crown. There was no flute. There was sometimes he showed even 4 arms. And when he said, we can get together, and the gopis said, the very last verse of that chapter, he said, Ahus chatina lina nava padara vindam, and so on. So they said, actually, we want you back in Vrindavan. Where is your flute? You are a big personality here. We are simple ladies with simple mind from the Kaur village. So we want you back into Vrindavan. We want you back into our hearts. Put again your peacock feather, take your flute. Of course, we know Krishna is not playing flute outside of Braj because he's not so inspired as to do that. I mean, he's playing flute because there's some udipana for him to do that. He's doing that on the strength of the Brajavasis love. You take out Brajavasi's love, you are taking out Krishna and Vrindavan, because again, a particular form of the absolute corresponds with a particular type of love. You take out that love, you have another form of the absolute. So this is a particular form, again, that is appearing in the hearts of the gopis at this precise moment when they are hearing the flute from the village that is coming from the forest. So this is another very nice, like mantra maya upasana. This type of verses would give us a, oh, it's mantra maya upasana. Yesterday someone drew that. I was the one who guessed that, so I won't say anything. Like a still picture of the whole movie when one particular scene of the Leela is depicted, and one can really, you can see so many details to meditate on. This is a very nice verse to memorize also. I don't know how much we are accustomed to memorize shlokas, but that's a very nice seva. No, it's not a mechanical thing. Okay, I have to learn a verse and repeat, but it's an offering. I mean, you can come to the deities and you can offer in verses. That's one of the main offerings to the deities. No? Offering prayers, offering verses, of course, offering different ornaments and bhoga and articles. But there are so many nice verses in the Shastra that are pleasing to Sri Thakurji. So we can learn them by heart. We can meditate on them, and we can try to present them with some emotion and offer ourselves through that. So I'm saying that because sometimes the learning of verses is not so much appreciated in that context, but it's sometimes seen as a, I don't know, memory competition, and it ends up being an ego stuff, and it has nothing to do with and it's not only to be expert for knowing verses when giving the class and showing everyone how much I know. It's not that much, but it's how much all those things are nourishing our own bhajan, meditation, and offering. So this is a very nice one. Indeed, there is a very famous picture which kind of depicts this scene. I think I sent that to you. I don't know if there, I have it here with me also. So I will again do my second experiment of sharing screen. And I will share it with the ones who are connected. There's a very nice picture that was made by the instruction of Srila Prabhupada by one of his earlier disciples called Govinda Dasi. So I think all of you know the picture. There it is. So it shows mostly Krishna and Balaram, and you see that the gopas are there and the cows are there. No, this is what their gopis. The gopis are not there because again the gopis are in the village. No? So here they are entering the forest. So this is what they are visualizing. So this is a very, very beautiful picture that depicts this particular scene. And interestingly, to say that that's an aside, but maybe you may know for those who read Oh My Friend, but Govinda Dasi, the author of the painting, she said that to Prabhupada, and that gopa that is next to Krishna Balaram, that's you. And I need to say that Prabhupada never objected to that. He generally objected when there was some like wild speculation going on. And I mean, if he was not that, that would be a wild speculation. Like, you are that in the painting. I want, and he just like silence, maybe choke up and silence. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Also, this is another way of establishing how this verse is very, very important. Most of our acharyas mentioned that this is one of those few very powerful verses that Vyasadeva gave to the woodcutter when he sent the woodcutter, bring my son back, Sukadev back. As you know, the story of Sukadev Goswami was just 16 years on the womb of his mother. So we can empathize with her. And you can even empathize more that after 16 years, say, okay, so finally I will see my son after so long. And the first thing Sukadev Goswami is doing is just running into the forest. He does not want anything to do with these family affairs. You can imagine mother, father. And it to say Vyasadeva is running after him. Jam prabha jam tan upeta napeta krityam dvaipayano viraha katara juhava. Putretitam mayatayatara bhovine dustam sarvabhuta hridayam muninam natoshmi, says the Bhagavatam. I often pronounce Sukadev Goswami, who after being born just ran into the forest. And Vyasadeva, his father, was running after him, calling him Putreti, oh son, Putra, Putra. And the only sound that came back was the trees. the sound of the truth replying the same words, like implying there was no reply from Sukadeva. So this is one of the verses, along with some others that are mentioned for. One of them is the other verses is the famous verse that Uddhav mentions regarding how merciful Krishna is. Aho vakiyam stanakalakutam yigyan sajapayada pisadvi livengatim gatruchitam tatonim kambanda yalun sharnam rajima. You know the verse. Uddhav say he gave Vatsalya to Putana. I mean, how someone can be more merciful, and how you could ever surrender to someone else apart from Krishna. This is another of the verses that Vyasadeva gave to the woodcutter to bring back the Atmaram, to make someone fall from Brahman. And also sometimes it is mentioned that another verse that was given for bringing Sukadeva back is one of the 10th canto, which says Nibrita Tarshe Rupagiya Mana Bhavosada Chotra Vinamiraman Kautama Shloka Gunanunabat Vinapi Virajeta Vinano Pashum Virakyeta Vinyapasuknya, which is a verse which glorifies Harikatha basically. So these three verses speak about the beauty of Krishna, the one we are describing today, the mercy of Krishna, the one connected to Putana, and the power and glories of Harikatha, which is non-different from Krishna. And all these three verses made the Atmaram Sukadeva Goswami come back from the forest, like hypnotized, like following the sound of those verses from the forest. He was brought back. Of course, Vyasadeva was not running after Sukadeva because he was like an attached Grihamedi. Oh, I have my son. At least let's take a picture, one selfie, and go to the forest. No, nothing like that. But just actually, Vyasadeva said, my son is so qualified to receive Bhagavatam. I have such a qualified disciple there, prospective disciple, and he just ran into the forest. So he's running after his disciple. Come back, you are such qualified. Come, I need someone to receive this gift of the Bhagavatam. So again, these verses were sent, one of them, the one we are studying here, and Sukadeva returned like hypnotized. And eventually Atmaramas Chamunayo Nirgram Tapiru Kurme Kurbanti Haitukim Bhaktimitam Mutaguno Hari says the Bhagavatam. The glories of Hari, the qualities of Hari are such, so attractive that even Atmaramas, someone who is beyond any attraction from this world, become attracted to that, which means this attraction is not from this world. It's paranormal. It's totally transcendental. So before going to an explanation of each part of the verse, let me share something that Sanatana Goswami says in his Brihad Bhagavatamrita. He says, Brihad Bhagavatamrita, Brihad Vaishnav Toshini, sorry. Here there is no representation of ornaments such as pearl necklace and golden armlets, since that description is eternally established automatically. Or, as we mentioned, every time he says or, he likes even more that version. Or it's because of entering in the forest just in that fashion, exclusively with a forestial apparel for the purpose of a particular recreation on the first day of autumn. According to Sanatana Goswami, it's the first day of autumn. So one meaning is, yeah, Krishna also has some other ornaments that are not mentioned, but everyone knows that they are included in the whole packaging. Or he's especially dressed today with forest ornaments, and only the ones depicted here and some other more opulent stuff is left behind at home for other moments of the day. But now he's going to the forest, so he has a proper, he's entering into a particular stage, so he is dressing, if you will, in a particular way. So let's go to the meaning of the verse. We will go word by word, because this is a very systematic description of every single aspect of these defining qualities of Krishna. So again, let's try to also make this some form of disciplined visualization of each one of these things in order to invoke attraction towards our Istadev. So let's go with the first. I don't know where we will end. Maybe we'll not be able to go beyond the first line or the first word, but no problem. Barha Pidam. Let's go with Barha Apidam. Again, Barha meant peacock feather, and Apidam means on top of his head. So he's crowning his head with the, technically speaking, Barha can mean peacock. So sometimes they say, strictly speaking, they will say he has a peacock on his head, which may sound like a little bit like, well, like if a peacock is sitting on Krishna's head, because it is said that sometimes he not only has one feather, but he has so many feathers that if you see him at the distance, it seems like, oh, like a whole peacock is dancing on Krishna's head. No? Sorry?
Crown.
Yeah, like a peacock feathers crown, basically. No? So, but basically that's the idea. No? His head is crowned by a peacock feather. And of course, we will go to all the implications of that. It's not just because it's cool and aesthetic, but there's a lot of things behind. So, and of course, he has a top knot, as we know, in Krishna's general style. Of course, he has different ways he combs his hair, and he has the turbans and the peacock feathers. And generally, there are different pearls and jewels surrounding the top knot. But the crown of all that, like divine arrangement, on the hair, the turban, the pearls, the jewels, the Everest of the Himalayas, if you will, the top one is the peacock feather. Like that's like the ultimate crowning, if you will, element with all that it implies. And sometimes it is mentioned that it appears as if it is a half moon present there, and giving the impression of Krishna is like a dark cloud. It's always described his hue, and the peacock feather is like a, how do you say in English, a rainbow, appearing, crossing the dark cloud, because the colors of the peacock feather resemble all the different colors present in the rainbow somehow. It is said actually by many that the peacock feather has the 7 colors of the rainbow if you analyze them in detail. So they increase Krishna's beauty, or as it is said in Shastra, Parampadam Bhushana Bhushanangam. Krishna is so beautiful that you don't know if his ornaments are increasing his beauty or if his beauty is increasing the beauty of his ornaments. It's basically the latter. So our Guru Maharaj likes to make a very nice point regarding the peacock feather. We have one there, which the peacock feather on one side is pretty beautiful, pretty aesthetic. So and also it looks like an eye, if you see. So he will compare the idea of eye with vision or wisdom, or tattva and siddhanta. And the beauty aspect of the peacock feather with the notion of bhava and ecstasy and relishment. So the two ideals are present there. Of course, if you want one, you have to go first through the other. So first, you have to establish firm foundation of tattva and siddhanta, and then on top of that, you can build the palace of emotion, if you will. And Krishna is choosing to decorate himself with that. He's decorating himself with tattva and bhava. That's part of his ornaments, basically. And that will be our approach to him, basically. If he's adorned with that, we respect and honor the implications of his ornaments. So if the first implication of his crown is Siddhanta and Tattva, okay, I will be very careful in learning Tattva and Siddhanta, just because I want to approach Krishna in the proper way and honor his crown in the proper way. And that will take to bhava. From sadhana, we go to bhava. Also, of course, we already spoke something about the peacocks, and something that I forgot to mention that is also connected, at least according to the Brajabasi tradition. Again, this may have not been never have been scientifically proved, as with the swan drinking mixture of water and milk and taking only the milk, or the parrot biting the fruit and making it sweeter. Maybe that's not in the laboratory, but it's a way of expressing a point. So in Vrindavan also, sometimes they say that between peacock and peahen, the copulation process is through tears. He says that the peacock starts to cry, and the peahen swallows those tears and becomes pregnant. Again, how much that can happen in practice, that's a different thing. But again, the point is something here. When we speak about the union between Krishna and the gopis, and may seem some mundane eroticism, no, full of tears in between. And the tears, of course, are tears of bhava, tears of love, tears of ecstasy. So whatever union is totally in the context of tears of love. So there's nothing ordinary to that. So how this peacock feather came to crown Krishna's head? We can go there. You may imagine the history. Krishna says in the Gita, Patram Pushpam Phalam Toyam, you know the famous verse, if someone offers me leaf, flower, fruit, and so on, with bhakti, I will accept. So the peacocks hear this verse and they wonder, well, what we can offer to him. No, fruit is difficult, no, flower, but we can offer leaf. For a peacock, the leaf are their feathers, basically. No? And we can offer some water, no? Tears of divine service to him. And so that's their main offering. Again, externally seems very simple, but they are giving even a part of themselves, no? One of their feathers. It's like a part of myself in that particular form. So it is said that when the peacocks see Krishna dance, and next we will go eventually to Krishna as a dancer, again, Natavara, the best of dancers. The peacocks are dancers by nature. Their dance is very famous, and it's Anudipana for Krishna, and Krishna's dance is Anudipana for the peacocks. So when the peacocks see Krishna dancing, they feel, oh, he's one of us. How he dances, how he moves. We know that the peacock's dance has a lot to do with Madhurya also, with the romantic dynamics. So when they see Krishna dance, like he dances for the gopis, they feel like, wow, he's a peacock also. Like he's one of us. He's dancing in that way. And we remember even Krishna in one Leela, he appears as a peacock to that point. Even. So the peacocks see Krishna dance and they start to imitate him, and they start to dance, trying to follow Krishna's footsteps, if you will. And as we know, when Krishna is dancing, everyone is dancing. The whole world starts to dance. So I'm trying to say that everyone is dancing with the exception of the Apsaras. The Apsaras are the heavenly dancers. When Krishna is dancing, the Apsaras do not dance and just take notes about next new steps to improve in Dwarga, how to really dance. Everyone else is dancing, but the most famous dancers are just like watching and taking some new ideas. And of course, another connection between the peacocks is that when the peacocks see the rain cloud, they start to dance. That's like Anudipana for them. So when they see Krishna with Ghanshyam, whose hue is like the rain cloud, naturally they mistake Krishna with a rain cloud, if you will, a dancing rain cloud. So they start to dance. That's another way of putting that. And during that dancing, it is that the peacocks at one point, they shed one of their feathers with the hope that Krishna may take that and accept that as an offering of love, that's what they are presenting. So Krishna sees the presentation of the peacocks. They are offering whatever they have with the utmost bhakti. And the peacocks themselves feel, we are not giving anything. This is nothing, one feather. It externally seems like insignificant. But it's, again, an extension of themselves, a very part of their being. So Krishna takes that offering and he really like appreciates that so much that he chooses to, he's not putting that in the pocket. I say, oh, thank you, I will see what I do with that at some point. No, he immediately, that goes on top of his head. Again, the highest thing that is accompanying Krishna is the peacock feather, you can see. And forever, it's not that he put the feather that day, so the peacocks are happy, and when the peacocks went, okay, thank you so much. That remained there perpetually, basically. Again, that's one of the defining features. The first one mentioned in this verse, peacock feather, Krishna. And of course, again, what does the peacock feather means in this context? Bhakti. And Krishna is decorating himself with bhakti. That's his Sringar. Sringar means decoration. Of course, Sringar also means romantic love, and ultimately, that's the bhakti of the gopis decorating him. But the idea is Krishna, and sorry if I sound too poetic tonight, but that's unavoidable. That's what the verses are, the implications of those verses. So Krishna takes the bhakti of his devotees and he decorates himself with them. The all attractive becomes more attractive, more beautiful with that. And he puts that bhakti, he receives bhakti from his devotees. I say, what should I do with bhakti? I will put bhakti on top of my head. No, that's bhakti. Bhakti is something that I worship and I maintain always on top of my head. So that's one of the symbols of the peacock feather. Krishna always maintains bhakti on top of his head, and his bhaktat, his devotees, his Abhiman, his self-consideration, who I am, is I am Bhakta Bhaktimam, says the Bhagavatam. Bhagavan Bhakta Bhaktimam. I am a devotee of my devotees. So the peacock feather is there as a reminder to all of us. No, not to him. He doesn't need to be reminded of that. He's totally absorbed into that. So he's putting love and bhakti on top of his head. And in this connection, of course, if you want to play out the ultimate implications of who is the ultimate highest personification of bhakti, we will converge in the figure of Sri Radha. So there's something very interesting in connection with the peacock feather as well, in connection with Sri Radha. And again, in one sense, one may say, okay, peacock feather is at the head of Krishna, but another way of conceiving it should be at the feet of Sri Radha, because she is the very personification of bhakti. So all that represents bhakti is at the feet of her. And that's why Krishna's head is most beautiful when it is at the feet of Sri Radha, basically. Whenever the feather goes, Krishna's head will follow. No? So if the peacock feather will fall at the feet of Radha, you may imagine where Krishna's head will go. So it is said that sometimes when Krishna is having Radha darshan, he's seeing Sri Radha and having Radha pada darshan, the darshan of Sri Radha, he starts to, as in many leelas, as we know, when he's lifting Govardhan, so many others, he's having Radha darshan and everything starts to move internally and external. So he starts to tremble on the peacock feather that is always crowning him, always fixed there, starts to move and starts to fall at the feet of Sri Radha. And somehow enters in touch with her feet. So the point is, and Sri Radha may ask at this point, sometimes that Lila is there, no? Radha will tell Krishna, okay, you are carrying this feather always in your head. But our love, my love, sometimes Sri Radha takes this bold position, but my love is higher than the peacocks, no, in a loving way. So in which way you are carrying me? You are carrying that feather everywhere. You are never leaving that feather. And it's okay, no problem. But what about us, gopis? What about me? No, my love is I love you so. How you are carrying me on every single level. So, as we know, Abhinatvam Namanamino, between Krishna and his name, there's no difference. We can apply the same idea between Sri Radha and her name. So, since Sri Radha's name is non-different from her, it is said that Krishna is always carrying Sri Radha's presence with him wherever he goes in the peacock feather, but in Parokshabad, in an indirect way. And how? You have to look at the second image that I sent, that I will have to again share here. Give me 1 minute. Here it is. So I will share screen for a third time. And if you pay close attention to the image, hopefully you can see there, or you can share there. The name of Sri Radha is written in the peacock feather. You have the design there? So you can see the letters. The first letter, if you can see the image there, is Ra. No, the short Ra. The next little stick is implying the long A. So it's Ra, because Radha, the two A's are long. So Ra, and then comes the Dha, which is like the inverted tree with the next little stick. That's the Dha, and the final one is indicates the long A. So it's Ra Dha. So you can see in this way, Sri Krishna is telling Sri Radha, I'm always carrying you above my head. Ultimately, that's the meaning. You know how there are so many meanings. Krishna is carrying the peacock feather in reciprocation to the peacocks, and appreciating bhakti on my head always in a general way. But we have always the specific version of this, which is ultimately, if you play out the highest implications of that, that's Sri Radha. So he's carrying her, and he's crowning himself with her name, basically. And that's the Krishna we worship, basically. The Krishna who has his head at the feet of Radha, or who has her above his head. There is a very nice verse by Prabodhananda Saraswati. He says, Rasa Gana Mohana Murtim Vichitra Kili Mahotsavolasitam Radha Charana Viloditam Ruchirasi Khandam Harim Vande. So there Prabodhananda Saraswati, but he's saying, I offer pranam to Krishna. It's a pranam mantra to Krishna, who has Rasa Gwana Mohana Murti. He's the most charming form of concentrated condensed rasa, and which is that particular form of Krishna in his most condensed rasic presentation. Ruchirasi Kandam Harim Bande. No. Who has his peacock feather on the floor and his head is rolling on the ground. Radhachara Nabi Lodita, at the feet of Sri Radha, says Prabhupada Saraswati. That's the Krishna I worship, he said. The one whose peacock feathers rolling on the ground at the feet of Sri Radha. That's our Krishna, the Gaudiya Ishtadev, if you will. No. Mohana, yeah, Krishna Mohana. We have Cupid Mohana, Krishna's Madan Mohana, and Sri Radha's Madan Mohan Mohini. No, Mohan is Cupid, the one who enchants everyone. Krishna is the one who enchants, that one who enchants everyone. And Sri Radha is the one who enchants, that who enchants everyone. So, first word of the verse. Can I continue some minutes? A little bit, not that much, but a little bit. Let's go to the next part of the verse. Natavara Bapu. I think maybe we will finish with that, let's say. So Natavara Bapu, from the peacock feather as a crown on Krishna's head, will go to Natavara Bapu, which means his Bapu, his body is Natavara, the king of dancers, the topmost dancers. In other words, everything about Krishna's body is the topmost dancer. Everything in Krishna's body is dancing in the topmost way, from head to toe, from tip to toe. His attire, his ornaments, everything is Natavara. Everything is king of dancers. On his chest, he has, as we have seen, by Jayanti Mala, the garland, but the garland is always depicted as dancing. Do not ever think of Krishna with everything like in pause. Okay, mantra maya upasana. But even if you think mantra maya upasana, you have to remember everything is moving. Maybe you have the same image, no? Like when they do in like a GIF, there's one image, but there is some movement repeat. So you don't have the whole movie, it's only one image, but some dynamics is there. So you can meditate. This verse is one image, but the earrings are dancing. The Baijayanti Mali with its 5 kind of flowers dancing, is swinging. His 10 fingers is rhythmically moving while playing the flute. So everything is dancing in a very charming way. His locks of hair are moving, and what to speak, his heart. That's the main movement going on there. So everything in his body is dancing, but not just dancing, but Natavara Bapu. That's a very nice description. Natavara Bapu. Everything in his Bapu is Natavara. You never hear a description like this of anyone. No? Like everything in his body is the king of dancers. It's like, what? But the Bhagavatam is the gopis, basically, through Sukadev Goswami. Those are the words through which they are trying to express what they are perceiving, how they feel, how they perceive Krishna's body. So his body is Natavara, and therefore it's not comparable to any other dancer, what to speak, no? Because dancing is attractive, and a dancer may be attracted, and divine dancing is attractive. We have some dancers also. We have Mahadev, for example, Shiva. Sometimes he's called Nataraj, as you may have heard, the king of dancers. He's celebrated throughout the 2 worlds, mostly because of his Sandava Nitya, which is the destructive dancers at the end of the creative cycle. So it's another type of dance which destroys everything. In the case of Krishna, his dancing is mostly creative more than destroying, creative and celebratory, basically. So, and of course, as we know, Krishna is the guru in one sense of Mahadev. Mahadev is aspiring in that direction. So Krishna is the Natara, the dancing guru of Shiva. And apart from him, I mean, no other avatar of Vishnu is dancing. You never heard Varaha dancing, Nrsimhadev dancing, Vishnu dancing. You never heard that. So even Krishna outside of Vrindavan. So only Krishna and no avatari. Only avatari is dancing in this way, Natavara. Krishna or Sriman Mahaprabhu ki jai, who is none different, of course, from Sri Hari in his ultimate Natavara moments, for sure. So a famous example of Krishna's Natavaras we always mention is Krishna dancing on the hoods of Kaliya and giving this like trailer of what's to come regarding Rasa Lila, showing to the gopis, see how nice dancer I am, just in case, no? If you would like to join me. So he's giving this unique mercy to Kaliya, stamping the marks of his foot on Kaliya's head. And it is said that Kaliya at one point he started to receive so much mercy that his hoods, he started to ask Krishna, oh, this hood remains to be imprinted with your lotus feet, dance on this one. So Krishna will jump on that particular one. I mean, there's not that much place to dance in a serpent's hood. It's like, this is the stage. But Krishna was not a Raj, so he was able to do a whole dancing in that particular spot and then jump to another hood and then jump. And it's a moving stage. No, he's not I mean, you can dance here. Okay, let's dance, and who knows what mess I may do dancing, but but Krishna was dancing on a moving stage. The hoods of and it was slippery. A serpent's head with water. This was the space, but he was doing such a jumping from one to another and so on. So he's Nataraj, as we mentioned. In Rasa Lila, he will receive the official PhD of dancer with the gopis there. Mahaprabhu, what to speak, Nataraj, Rath Yatra, the dance of Mahaprabhu is described in a very beautiful way. Indeed, in Rath Yatra, Mahaprabhu is engaged mostly in dancing rather in any other activity. If you pay attention, he's dancing, he's dancing, he's dancing. And again, this dancing it's a natural ecstatic expression of celebration, as Guru Maharaj will say. And when you are too full, you cannot just sit. You need to wake up and dance. You need to celebrate your fullness. In this world, people are celebrating their foolishness, but you need to celebrate your fullness. So Krishna always is dancing. Again, everything is dancing in him. Sometimes Krishna is depicted, in some names of Krishna have more to do with like Murlidhar, Bamsi Vadana, Venu-gita, different names. He's a flute player. Sometimes that's the main label we may hear. That's his designation, flute player, musician. But even in those situations, whenever you see he's playing flute, he's depicted in, he's dancing. I mean, there's some movement. It's not that the Krishna's like strike like this, like no movement. Everything is in him. So we know Trivanga Lalita. So moving in such a way, his pose is always inviting for dance, again, the deities are in celebratory movement. That's Leela, celebratory movement, very different movement than from karma. And Srila Jiva Goswami, in his commentary on this section, he says that this Natavara form of Krishna is the best of Krishna's form. Again, we are pounding this same pose over and over again, but Krishna is the king of dancers, is his best form, because what makes him dance again? So that's the real reason why he's the highest form. And Jiva Goswami say that's such a high form that not only astonishes everyone, but astonishes even Krishna himself. Krishna himself is astonished by such a form, such beauty. And he quotes a famous verse from the Bhagavatam, Janmarte lila boyikansa yoga, and Mayavalam Dharsayata Grihitam Bhishmapanam Sasya Cha Sobhagarti Parampadam Bhushana Bhushanam. So Bhishmapanam Sasya Cha Sobhagar. This Janmarte lila boy, you can see this Nara form, this human-like form of Krishna in Vrindavan is so beautiful that it astonishes Krishna himself and all his other forms, Narayan and so on. All of them are like dumbfounded. Do you say dumbfounded? Like Faber glasses? Like, oh my God, such beauty there. Because again, Natavara has to do also with Nara Lila, the human-like form of Krishna, which is its highest form. Krishna Raya Tikka Kila, Sarvotama Nara Lila, Narabapu Tanhara Sarup, Gopavesh, Venukar, Navakishar, Natavar, Nara Lila, Hai Anurup, says Krishna Das Kaviraj. This Krishna human-like form, Nara Lila, is the best of all Leelas, is the best of all forms. There is no comparison, he says. And he describes that form similar to here. Gopavesh, dressed as a cowherd, Venukar, flute in hand, Navakishore, eternally young, Natavar, king of dancers. And he then says, oh, Nara Lila, Hai Anurup. This Nara Lila is like too much. And he passes out after saying that. So he is a Natavar, the best of dancers. And again, best of dancer has to have certain requisites, even in this world, what to speak Krishna. No? Best, a good dancer has to be good balance and good tempo or good relationship with rhythm. If you don't have too much rhythm in your DNA, better you try being a carpenter or something. Because you need to know how to dance, to have follow rhythm in that, especially Indian dancing so much. So you have to have good balance. You have to have nice ankle bells in Indian dancing. You have the ankle bells and you're establishing the rhythm with this. Krishna is tucking his dhoti up. So when he dances the dhoti, I mean, if you try to dance with the dhoti too low, that may end in a tragedy. And many other things. He has to have everything, good smile, nice eyes, nice moving of the eyes. If you pay attention to Indian dancing, it's so much going on in the eyes only. Now, what to speak about the mudras and the different emotional expressions with the hands, and keeping an eye on the audience, because the audience is there, is reciprocal and so on. In this case, the audience are the gopis. So all of this put together in its highest possible degree, that's Natavara Bapu. That's Krishna dancing for the gopis. But also, let me go to some alternative meanings before we end. This may be probably the longest class of my visit here, just for you to prepare. And we will get just the first line of the verse. So Jiva Goswami also mentions that Natavara has a second meaning, interestingly. We are just beginning. So Natavara, yes, king of dancers, but also Vara not only refers to that the topmost, but Vara refers to a boy who is about to get married, Jiva Goswami mentions, and who is dancing in joy. Like if he's just to get married and he's like celebrating. So basically Krishna is, of course, he never gets married in Braj. He's like a playboy there, but somehow he's married with the gopis. So he's about to get married in the form of about to officially meet with them. So in that case, Natavara can be applied to that. He's expressing that delight that comes from the anticipation of we will get together very soon. And everything, as we know in Golok, led by such a Natavara, as Brahma Samhita say, every step is danced there. Every word is sung, and Jiva Goswami will say, what does it mean when they start dancing? What does it mean when Natavara appears on a scene? Oh my God. So again, their dancing is an overflowing of Ananda. They are not dancing to attain ecstasy. That's what people do when they go to a discotheque. And since they cannot attain ecstasy, they have to swallow one pill with that name to get as closer as possible. At least something with the name is involved in all the and it lasts for a moment, and then you have all the consequences of that. But in this case, you are seeing people dancing out of ecstasy, not in need of, but out of, because that's already there. Their dancing is impelled. Impelled, you say? So that's an anubhav. Anubhav means like ecstatic reaction. Ecstasy is already there, and it makes you whatever, sing, shout, laugh, whatever, dance in this case. For us sadhakas, we may not have ecstasy, but also the dancing in the context of bhakti is a means to ecstasy. So if we are dancing, it's a natural expression of something we are feeling. It may not be yet bhava bhakti, but it's something that properly expressed may take us to that goal. And also a third meaning of Natavara Bapu is, instead, they say, many commentators, instead of Natavara Bapu, they say Natanara Bapu, emphasizing Nara. Nara means human. So basically saying that he's dancing, not so much regarding his Krishna's human-like form, but Krishna's dancing makes all other Naras, means humanity, dance. His dancing inspires our dancing, basically. His dancing inspires dance in others. And that's what happened in Vrindavan, as we mentioned with the peacocks and others. When they see Krishna dancing, they start dancing. And everything starts dancing. So Nata Nara Bapu in this case means he who, by seeing whom, one feels inspired to dance. And there is another meaning, a fourth one. If you don't like this, you have to speak with our Goswami, sorry. But I hope you like it. Another meaning of Nata Nara Bapu is for Krishna. When he starts dancing, he forgets he's God. And he becomes immersed in this Nara Lila, in this human-like pastime. And not so much, not only he forgets, but others forget he's God. They saw him dancing, and that's the psychology of Braj, of course. Nobody's thinking Krishna is God. They are seeing him in terms of his Krishna. He's not Avara Bapu. God doesn't dance. And Krishna himself gets so absorbed in that dancing that he's not aware that he's God again, similarly. Because again, he reciprocates with that Gyan Sunya Bhakti. The devotees approach him as if he's not God, and he replies accordingly. And as we know, famous Nietzsche have said, I will believe in a God that dances, whatever it may be the context of all that. But he had a glimpse for me at that. Like the ultimate reality must be dance. The ultimate reality should be dancing. It has to be dance, basically. Many Western philosophers say very interesting something like Dostoevsky once said, beauty will save the world. And of course, we will agree totally. It all begins with a peacock feather. So God must be a dancer. Beauty will save the world. We have our own version of that, but many people in a sincere search reach the shores of those same conclusions, basically. So again, dancing is like movement, but added with beauty, movement uplifted with beauty. So if, in the same way, when you combine word with beauty, it becomes poetry. When you combine movement with beauty, it becomes dance. And everything in Vrindavan is poetry and dance, because everything is beauty. The all attractive is there. Again, a different movement, dancing. Lila is a different movement than karma. And of course, ultimately, if you want to give another layer of meaning to Natavar, Nara Bapu, Nara Vara Bapu, is okay. Krishna is the king of dancers, but and Krishna is not about Mahaprabhu as well, especially because of what? Krishna Das Kaviraj, Radhikar Prem Guru, Ami Sisya Nata. The Natavar, the famous in the whole world of this, he says that Sadaman Ananritin Achayodvata. He says, actually, everyone knows me as the king of dancers, but in my own estimation, I'm just a pupil, student at the school of dancing of Sri Radha, Krishna is saying, through the pen of Krishna Das. I'm going to her dancing school. Sri Radha has a dancing school. The movement is in terms of prem. And Krishna says, Ami Shishya, I'm a disciple, I'm a student in that school. And Radhikar Prema, the prem of Sri Radha is my guru and makes me dance so many wonderful dances, make me move. Okay. Sorry, here we are again, almost finishing, but Oh, now I have to allow other one, the translator again? No. Yes. Oh no, it's okay there. So, oops, 1 second. Okay. English, I have to put English? Okay. So, so here we are. The computer is about to say there had an overdose of nectar and had to collapse for a minute, take a breath, and here we are back. So we were just saying some last few words regarding the Nata Vara Bapu idea of how all this converges as usual, as the peak of feather converges in Radhanam, Krishna being the king of dancers converges in his being a student, a pupil at her school of dancing. And we will see how all of these qualities of Krishna mostly ultimately had their ultimate meaning and application in connection to Sri Radha. But give me 5 more minutes. Let me finish the first line of the verse. No, we have 4 lines. At least let me finish the first, and I will try tomorrow to finish the other 3. If I don't know if that will be ever possible, but this will be shorter than the other qualities. Let's go to the last words of the first line, which is Karnayo Karnikaram. Which, remember, Karnayo means on both ears, is a plural. Karnikaram is singular. He has 1 karnikar flower, which is like a, how is it in English, water lily? You pronounce like this, like a water lily, which is yellow, but sometimes also described as blue. Which again, these 2 colors are always to do for Krishna. Yellow is Radha's hue, Radha's luster, and blue is what? No, but he's not a narcissistic. He won't put his own color there. That's Radha's clothes, no? Which is connected with Krishna's hue, but everything he will wear is in connection to her. So again, Karnayo is in plural, 2 ears, and Karnikar is singular, 1 flower. So what's the idea of this description? In his 2 ears, 1 flower. No? How do he has half flower here, half flower there? What's the dynamic? So what's the meaning? So the meaning is basically that there are many meanings, but the main meaning given by our church is that Krishna is wearing 1 flower. Sometimes it has it on the right ear, sometimes it has it on his left ear. And of course, that will depend on which side the gopis are looking. So if the gopis are from this side, Krishna will put the like to look more beautiful, like in the eyes of the gopis. And also with the flowers, send some messages to them. And when he's returning, when he goes to the forest, the gopis may be here. He's returning, they may be there. So he will say the flower and and something is, well, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur mentions that with these flowers, Krishna expresses the intoxication of his youth. Because he's Dira Lalita, he's entering adolescence and he's intoxicated with romanticism, basically. 1 second, again, something going on. So by putting the flower in the same direction that the gopis are, basically he's pointing to how much he loves them. Sometimes it is said that this Karnikara flower on earth, not on Krishna's ear, blossoms on faces like the eastern direction, when the sun is rising. And it is said that as the sun is moving from the east to the west, the Karnikara flower is like accompanying that, like always facing the sun, following the path of the sun, basically. And it is said that when the sun is setting, the Karnikara flower also is like showing her loyalty to the sun, her friendship, if you will, to the sun. So in the same way, Krishna is saying that when he's taking the cows to graze, like he's doing in the scene depicted in this verse, he's putting the Karnikar flower on the ears that are the ear that is facing the gopis and Sri Radha, in particular Sri Radha. When he's returning, he will put on the other side, just to always face them, basically. In other words, he only has eyes to them, indicating his heart's deep affection for them. Like the flower with the sun. Krishna is known as sun also. Krishna Surya Sammaya and the Kardahan Krishna. But Krishna has his own sun as well. No, Shri Radha is the son of the sun, basically, of Krishna's son in that sense. No, the one that gives life, his Shakti, his Swarup Shakti. So, some brief words regarding this section. I promise that. So I am trying to follow my word. So with this, we are just finishing the first line, but hopefully tomorrow we can continue with the remaining three or whatever it takes on this very beautiful fifth verse of the Venu-gita, which again gives us this very clear Krishna, deep Krishna meditation from the heart of the gopi through the mouth of Sukadev, and hopefully through our ears, minds, and hearts as well. So thank you so much for your attention, and we continue tomorrow. Srila Gurudev ki jai, Sriman Mahaprabhu ki jai, Sri Harinam Sankirtan ki jai, Sri Sri Dauji Gopal ji ki jai, Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Sri Venu-gita ki jai, Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki jai, Gaur Pramanand. Vancha kalpatarubhyasya kripa sindubhyaiva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai, Gaur Hari Bol. Sadhu Sangha ki jai, Gaur Hari Bol. Thank you so much.